Hello, everybody. Thank you for tuning in to the Liberty Report. With me today is co-host Daniel McAdams. Daniel, good to see you.
Good morning, Dr. Paul.
Good. There was a great debate last night.
Indeed.
90 minutes straight, no advertisement, serious business. And did you do your homework? Did you watch the whole program?
I have to confess I did watch the whole thing, but to save my sanity, I sarcastically tweeted throughout it. So.
Oh, okay. That relieved a little bit of the tension.
It did, yeah.
Well, I don't tweet well. I have comments in my own mind, and I jot down messages, but I didn't do that. But I have to confess, I didn't do 100% on the homework. I had it on the whole time, but there were times when the frustration level got so high I had to get a little reprieve and leave the room, but then I got back. Well, I got to know what's going on. Somebody might ask me a serious question. But the question is who won? I can't figure out exactly who won, but I have an opinion about who lost. As far as I'm concerned, I think the American people have lost. You know, not only last night, they gained nothing. Liberty was not refreshed in the minds of the people. The whole debate, the whole campaign, the American people losing. But I think the American people basically have been losing for 100 years because we have lost our way from a true republic to one of an empire that has undermined our liberties, and we are not really debating this. So do you want to voice your opinion about who might have won? Maybe one person had a little bit of edge over the other one?
Well, I think on the philosophical level, there's no way I can argue with you about who lost. But I think, everyone wants to treat it as if it's kind of almost a reality TV show, and I guess that's part of the fun of it or something. But I would say, as a recap, I thought that at first Donald Trump was starting slow, but then Hillary started attacking immediately. And so he responded because he can't help himself. And he is quite comical. His facial expressions are very comical. And I think if he does win, the caricaturists are going to have a field day with him. But then in the second half, it was very strange because Hillary Clinton, I think, found her sea legs. And she did a very good job. And Trump passed so many opportunities to hit some of these issues we'll talk about. But I think the reason Hillary won is because everyone was worried about her health. And if you saw her up there for 90 minutes, if they were giving her something, I want some of it. But sorry, she looked just fine.
I'd agree with that because as a physician, I've been thinking about her health. I read all the health reports and all the discussion and innuendos about it. And everybody saw the film where she literally collapsed. She fainted. And I got to thinking, this is risky business. If she has anything half as serious as has been implied in the media, she could pass out in this and the whole campaign would be over. Yeah. But, I think if nobody knew anything about either one of them and they really wanted to go, and there were a few people out of the millions that watched, came to look. And if they were just trying to study this, they might say, she looks, like she's in good health, and she was pretty good. And I think you mentioned that maybe Trump missed some opportunities, but I think the statistic shows that Trump did a lot more talking than she did, and she sort of set him up, and he grabbed it, and it seemed like she was content to set back. And some of course, people, and this comes from the media. The media really has declared it was a total victory for Hillary and a total defeat for Trump. And I just don't think that is the case. I think that, that it plays a role. I don't think it's a defining moment. And it's maybe a defining moment on what they do with the next one. So if Hillary thought she did well, she might do the same thing. And Trump may decide that he should be more aggressive because if they say he didn't do well, I don't think they ever mentioned immigration.
Yeah, that's amazing.
And he's done that from the very start. I mean, if anything, he could have talked about it in a more dignified tone and shown that, this is a serious business and explained that. But he never mentioned the immigration, and that was the big issue he missed. But also people point out that he didn't talk much about, the justice system and how the Clintons have been treated versus some poor people in the inner city. I think I would have wanted to grab hold of that because she, whether it's the foundation or whether it's the emails or all of this, the Clintons have gotten a pass, and I think, but they weren't pressed on this. So I think that the whole issue of winning is not simple, but image-wise, I think Hillary had a little bit of an advantage. But there's still a little bit of time left in the campaign. The markets are saying that Trump lost. I like to watch and see what the markets do. And, the Mexican peso kept going down with Trump's talking. And yet, because he was perceived, they say, that he lost, the peso went up. So I don't know whether you can put any stock in that or not.
Yeah, you're right. The thing that I think was unfortunate that he didn't hit on, I mean, she started with innuendo and then got stronger and stronger that basically Trump is controlled by Putin, the Russians are running this election, all this absurd McCarthyite stuff that the Democrats have been doing. And it would have really been teed up for him to say, well, what about how the Saudis gave you $20 million for your foundation? And what about the revolving door between big donors and State Department high-level meetings? All of these things that fell into his lap, and he.
Yeah, and I've said in our conversation, I have often mentioned that the foundation is a big issue, and it's being brushed over, And if anybody would have done 1/100th of what they've done with that foundation on collecting funds and selling influence and being involved in the State Department and the presidency, I mean, and hardly a whimper. And the odds of the FBI really investigating that, they said, well, maybe they'll investigate it. But I just think that is the biggest issue. I was disappointed that we didn't hear more about that. But he could have put her more on the defensive, on the foundation operation.
Yeah. Well, I know you are you're pretty strong in your views of Trump. I try to be hopeful, I try to look for some glimmer. And I may have found something that might glimmer a little for you. Just a little bit of glimmer. So here's one part. When Trump did mention the Fed, and we thought he wouldn't. So in our show last night, but he did say that Yellen is, quote, doing political things by keeping the interest rates low, and he said that the economy is one big fat ugly bubble and worried about a stock market crash. So
okay, I wouldn't disagree with any of that he says, but I would like to see more, because there's the problem. He has already said at times, well, low interest rates really can be good. It's going to be rough raising interest rates because they're very, very valuable, implying that maybe we shouldn't raise interest rates. But my conclusion on what we should be talking about is, what about the FOMC? Fixing interest rate, regulating the money supply. What about the Federal Reserve, Federal Reserve's existence? Why don't we talk about really auditing and really getting rid of this? Because that is really what counts. They didn't get into the economics, and this is not a criticism of either one of them as much as the host and just the perceptions. They ought to be talking, why has the recession, depression, lasted so long? And the key reason is, and Trump made the right point, the Fed has messed this up. Interest rates too low, too long. But what does it do? It creates a bubble in debt. It causes malinvestment, and you need a correction. You need to liquidate. You need to get rid of this. You need to cleanse the system. But there was no mention of that, because politically that's dynamite. You say, oh, you mean you let them have a depression for a year? Yeah, a depression for a year is a lot better than a steady disintegration of our economy. But the fact that it came up, I just hope that people use that as an incentive to study monetary policy a little bit more in depth, because as you well recall, I always wanted to bring up the Fed because I consider this so important. So he did a service by at least mentioning, the Fed is a culprit in the mess we have, and hopefully they'll start talking about the solution.
Well, I know you won't say it, so I will. Probably the only reason he even used that word is because of at least your two campaigns where it came up constantly. So he certainly paved the way there for that to come up.
He's good at that, because I think he has said something favorable about an audit of the Fed. Yeah. It doesn't tell you where his heart and his mind is, But no, I think he's very good at that and very smart. And he knows how to appeal to this group to build up a majority. He did that obviously very well in the primary. But the immigration issue was a hot button issue, and other things. But he also knows the other hot button issues are now more in the spending. Well, he'd spend more money on the infrastructure than Hillary would. He would. He still wants to rebuild our nuclear capacity and rebuild the military. And what about his position on NATO? Is it a consistent position?
Unfortunately, it's not, and that's one of the areas where I was hoping for some consistency. But the quote from him last night was, "I'm all for NATO." And this is just a few weeks after saying, NATO is out of date, it's outdated, it needs to, certainly at least implying that we need to shut it down. But he reiterated his foolish point that NATO is fine as long as the other countries pay for their protection from us. And first of all, it's very demeaning to the U.S. It makes us some sort of a mercenary country, and certainly doesn't sound very respectful for the troops. And it doesn't put America first, which is what his slogan is, to have us just being rented out to protect all these little Baltic countries.
Okay, now that you're, I won't say a sympathizer, but at least you you want Trump to get a fair shake, right? We should be as objective. Our job is to be as objective as possible. But on the news this morning, there was a hint, probably just a silly rumor passed out, that Trump might drop out of the debates. And that sounds a little bit strange and over the top. But what would you think of that proposal? And do you think there's a chance that he would drop out of the debates?
Well, I think that was something that Giuliani said last night, that that he was treated badly by Lester Holt, the moderator, and I think there's something to it, because
no doubt.
They were talking about all this stuff that was. So I think maybe they're trying to use that as a bargaining chip to get a little bit better of a moderator next time. But I just can't see him doing something like that, because if anything, it's free advertising, and because he's using a lot of his own money, he's probably a little more careful with it. Hillary doesn't have to worry about that. She's got other people's money. There
was somebody else on the TV this morning saying that was a Republican. He says, "Why are the Republicans so stupid? Why do they agree to this? Why do they always pander to the enemy and let them get in charge?" So obviously, the debate was very biased, and the reporting was all biased, and it was all biased in favor of Hillary and against Trump. But I don't know why they do it. You'd think that that would be part of the deal. What kind of a deal did they negotiate?
Yeah, I think some of the other things on foreign policy really were very disappointing on Trump's side. He said, "I think China should go into North Korea." I don't know what that means, or that means invade them or something. And that might be okay if he means instead of us bothering with them, let the Chinese sort it out. That would be okay, but it sounded more bellicose. Of course, Hillary, when she was attacked for being part of this Iran deal, she countered by saying, "I voted for every sanction against Iran."
Yeah.
As if that's a good thing.
Did since you were a little bit better observer on this debate, do you recall anything much said about the weapons going through Libya to Syria? Did Trump ever bring that up, or did they ever ask her the question?
No, but I did see a very good tweet from a senator that we both know from Kentucky that I laughed out loud when I saw it, because Hillary was saying, I have increased when I was Secretary of State, we increased exports. And Rand tweeted that and said, "Yeah, but it was exports of arms to jihadists." So that was a good zinger, I think, on his part.
Well, that will give him a challenge in the Senate, dealing with all those neocons. So, yeah. But I'm not likely. I don't think that we're likely to see Trump drop out. I think that would be negative, because somebody suggested all Hillary would have to do is invite Gary Johnson, and that would be it. But what if they never agree to have a better moderator? Since they had somebody, they said, well, the reason is Trump made the accusation, well, why don't you have a Republicans? So they claim they got a Republican. It's sort of, sometimes it's like just name doesn't mean anything. You have Hillary's a Democrat, but she's a neocon, and then you have Republicans that are very, very liberal. And even once in a while in the Libertarian Party, you have libertarians in the party who aren't very libertarian.
Yeah.
So,
well, I've got a good idea who could be the next moderator.
No way, not me. I wouldn't want that job for anything. No, well, I could propose. I
could
write
have some good questions.
I could write down some questions for him and ask him. Yeah, that might be fun. So we'll have to try to do that. Anyway, I want to thank everybody for tuning in today to the Liberty Report. And this interesting subject is going to continue for another month until the election. And then we're going to try to figure this out. We're going to try to figure out whether the American people really have lost that I think they have. And it's not so much last night they didn't lose and nor in this campaign. The people have been losing a long time. That is if they love their liberty. But if they don't care and they want to be taken care of and they want to be safe and secure and the government always gives them a welfare check and the big guys get welfare checks by belonging to the military-industrial complex, if that's their goal, they're doing pretty well and it's not being changed. But our country reversed itself in the early part of the last century, and it's been getting worse ever since. It's getting worse in Washington. The conditions are deteriorating. The economy is getting worse. The foreign policy is a disaster. At the same time, the rumbling out there is very positive, the rumbling of the people who want true liberty. And there's a lot of young people that know about it and understand it. And I'm glad that the Federal Reserve comes up because we have made that a point, and people are realizing that the Federal Reserve is an important issue. And we work very hard, and Daniel works very hard on the Institute for Peace and Prosperity to make foreign policy an important issue. And when it's looked at by the general public, believe me, we can win those votes, because how can anybody vote against peace and prosperity? That is our goal, and we'll continue to fight for it. I want to thank everybody for tuning in today to the Liberty Report, and please come back soon.